all know, my name is Jamira Burley, and welcome back to the program. I'm super excited. Sorry for the technical difficulties. As we've discovered with young people, one of the skills for the future is resilience. So let's practice that all today as we kick off this panel, talking about how do we unlock skills for the future of young people. Earlier today, I said that 1 out of every 2 young people are on track to obtain the basic skills needed for employment by 2030. So I'm going to jump right into our panel because we have an amazing lineup and I really want to get their thoughts and ideas before our time is up. And so I want to introduce Pia Wilson-Body, who's the president of Intel Foundation, Jude Kelly, who's the director of the WOW Foundation, Kwasi Mitchell, who's the principal of diversity and inclusion lead at Deloitte Consultant LLP, Ousmane Ba, who's the global youth ambassador from Sierra Leone, and he's currently based here in the United States. So as we know, we need to have a partnership of unlikely suspects working in collaboration with each other, from business leaders to young people to government leaders. And I want to throw the first question to Pia. Now, as we've seen, education has been disrupted around the world due to COVID-19, but also a host of other vulnerabilities that young people are faced with. From a business perspective, how can we think about rebuilding our societies post and some would say current pandemic? And what type of skills do we need to focus on to make sure that education is relevant for young people as well as for the labor market?
So let me at least begin by saying thank you, Jamira and Theirworld, as well as the Global Business Coalition for Education, for inviting me to join this esteemed panel. The last time you and I were together, we were discussing the how to prepare tomorrow's workforce for the 4th Industrial Revolution. And that just seems like a lifetime ago right now. Yes, for sure. And life as we knew it just 8 months ago really changed with the global pandemic. As far as the business world, this crisis has really forced business leaders to shift operations. Most of you know, digitize the way services are delivered, and leaders are having to reimagine business models. And employees have had to make shifts in where and how they manage their work. You asked me about the types of skills young people need entering the labor market. What I will say to you, as well as educators joining us today, digital literacy, critical thinking, problem solving, computational thinking, having that design and growth mindset are still relevant, especially as businesses reimagine their strategies and delivery models. But what's emerging now and will be of greater importance post-pandemic are those essential skills. And some might refer to those as softer skills. I've captured the essential skills as simple as ABC. Adapt, be resilient, communicate, communicate, communicate. Adapt, be resilient, communicate. Young people entering the workforce need to be able to adapt to rapidly changing conditions, adapt to new technologies, shifting priorities, and just the ways of working. They must be, and I have to say this again, be resilient and able to thrive in change. And for most of us, coping with change can be very difficult. So it's important for young people to develop those skills that can help them manage stress, as well as navigate challenging situations. In other words, they need to be able to bounce back in the face of adversity, and it's going to be critical to their success in the workplace. And the last piece I wanted to share in terms of skill set is around just having good communication skills, both verbal and written, plus interpersonal skills will help foster strong working relationships, which really results in greater productivity, performance, and overall morale. Jamira, there's one that I'm going to add, and that's around cultural awareness and sensitivity. a couple weeks ago, I had a peer ask about a painting, right? A wall hanging in my dining room. And initially at least her body language was not complimentary to what I thought was or think is beautiful art. But I had an opportunity to share that piece had some cultural relevancy. So I treated it as a learning opportunity. And she thanked me and said she appreciated that I had shared and felt like she got to know me a little bit. We are bringing co-workers in our private spaces and really getting to know each other through this lens. So I think it's very important to have some awareness as well as sensitivity. So in my closing, to address this question around skill sets, I think we need to be cognizant of the fact that the future generation need to be equipped with those essential skills. There was a recent Gartner CFO survey that revealed that almost 3 in 4 CFOs plan to shift at least 5% of their previously on-site employees to permanently remote positions post-COVID-19. So those skills that I cited, adapt, be resilient, as well as have great communication skills and cultural awareness, I think will go a long way for young people entering the labor market.
No, I really appreciate that. And I couldn't agree more, especially with the cultural competence piece. I think that's overlooked so often. But as the world gets smaller with technology and social media, how are we asking questions, learning more about each other without making these assumptions about who someone is based on a very small piece of information we might have access to? So I really appreciate you laying that out and helping to lay the groundwork for this conversation. Jude, I want to turn to you. We know that education is unattainable for a lot of young people around the world, but specifically those who are the most vulnerable, women and girls, are constantly left out of the conversation regarding education, especially in other parts of the world, again, bringing in that cultural competence. When we think about the labor market, I'm curious from your perspective as the founder of WOW Foundation, what are some of the hurdles that girls are facing when it comes to obtaining skills needed for the future? And how can we all be better allies in ensuring we're uplifting the change that needs to occur?
Yeah, so thank you. And great to be here, by the way. And fantastic to hear the previous speaker talking about the qualities that young people need to have and often do have. I mean, first of all, these are well-rehearsed arguments, but the first impediment is history. You know, the history of prowess, intellectual prowess, technical prowess, creative prowess, all of those things. The history is written in a way that suggests that girls and women haven't really been part of that history. And therefore, you know, there is still the issue of girls and women having the confidence to put themselves forward and say, I'm equally equipped, or I will be equally equipped to do this. There's also the history of what sort of femininity is supposed to mean, as in docile, as in not as bright as your partner, as in not technically adept, but maybe something that is much more sort of craft-based and domestic. So there's lots and lots of negative role models that say that cause girls and women to step back. We haven't solved by any means anywhere in the world the issue that patriarchal structures have made men feel, and it's sad for them, but have made boys and men feel that an indicator that they're a terrific guy is that they're actually better than a woman, better than a girl. And while that still holds, it means that people going into what should be healthy relationships are often forced into a situation where the girl has to again step back, step down, retreat, in order to make her male partner, if she's in a male relationship, male-female relationship, in order to make them feel as if they are somehow respected. These are, you know, huge psychological chasms that society can't solve overnight. And, you know, and because our canon, which is mainly white, male, and Western, reinforces over and over again what superiority looks like and how everybody's graded down from there. You know, girls find their place And white girls find their place, and girls of color find their place, and disabled girls find their place. And you have to, in your head, say, I am not accepting that place, which already is sort of anti-female in terms of what a nice girl does. So I would say a lot of the impediments are actually psychological but hard-baked into the way societies conduct themselves and cultures frame themselves. And we still, even though you might say different parts of the world, there are different social norms, which of course is true, the overarching idea of girls sort of moving towards domestic responsibility as their kind of final resting place, that is actually true in most parts of the world still. And you can see this is true because in COVID, when you get the pushback out of work, who's doing the homeschooling? Mm-hmm. Who's doing the cooking? Who's doing the caring? Women. And if you look at unpaid or devalued labor, who does that fall onto? Frontline care workers, women. And mainly in all our societies, women of color at that. So, I think that girls don't have sufficient role models that say, this is what you could be, but not only what you could be, because often it's described as something which is like for the girl's sake, for her own self-empowerment, for her own self-realization, which of course is her human right, and that's great. But society doesn't say clearly enough and enthusiastically enough, actually, we can't live without girls' talent. We can't thrive without women's expertise. We need women to make up for the deficit where a society has been only made up of male power. And I think this requires men to come to the table and not just say grudgingly, well, yeah, of course we're making some space for some girls and women, but actually to say, please, we need you. Some men do that, most don't. So the main impediments are cultural norms, attitudes that we need to change, and society is based on a kind of an economic valuation which doesn't include domestic labour and doesn't include unpaid caring. And I think that is a massive discussion. And then finally, I would say that childcare, we do not have universal childcare free at the point of having a child. And all of the expectations about somehow how that financial responsibility is carried still falls on women. So, even when women go up the ladder of professional ability, they come back down it again quite quickly. As soon as they start having children, they go part-time, they go freelance, their wages are vulnerable. And girls see all of this, and it makes for a very erratic message. If the message is girls are empowered, let's go for it. Let's do STEM subjects. Let's go to the moon, and why not? That's one message. But when you see society actually acting out something completely different in terms of exploiting and relying on girls and women's caring, powers and making it free and saying please step back for the man, then they're not really sure whether society means what they say. So we need so much more effort being put into girls' psychological education and boys' psychological education.
I fully agree. It's almost like we all need to relearn and reevaluate what's possible for young women instead of making these assumptions. So I actually want to bring in a young person, because I think oftentimes when we're having these conversations about the possibility of young people, about what they have the potential to do and the skills needed for the future, they're left out of the conversation. And Ousmane Ba, who is one of our global youth ambassadors, have lived in Sierra Leone and now based in the US. We know that the challenges for young people oftentimes supersede culture, experiences, and borders. I'm curious for you as a young person entering the workforce, what has been some of your challenges that you've seen for yourself, but also for many of the peers that you've interacted with? And how can adults and institutions better support you?
Well, Jamila, I'm excited to join all of you here today and feeding off of what the two previous panelists have talked about. As we all know, of course, we are living in an unprecedented time. COVID-19 has altered our way of life. It has triggered a new set of challenges, among which fewer and lesser economic opportunity for young people. The job market and professional spaces are increasingly shrinking at the expense of young people. Less job prospect and no immediate recourse seem to be on sight. The question many young people are grappling with today, especially graduates of 2020, who are mired in debt and yet so full of hope is whether they are well positioned and well equipped to compete in a very fragile economy. Now, make no mistake, young people have a massive economic hill to climb, and the condition to that steep economic hill have been the subject of concern for many years for young people. Automation, lack of social mobility, and the concentration of wealth in the hands of few. These conditions are nothing new. Nonetheless, they have become more pronounced and visible in the wake of this pandemic. And so we need a sustainable, more inclusive and nuanced approach to providing opportunities for young people to thrive and succeed. We should also acknowledge that young people have been at the forefront of any sort of change. So we need to empower them and provide them the right platform, not only to echo their concerns, but be able to inject their enthusiasm and energy in bringing about change.
Awesome, thank you. Kwasi, I mean, I'm so excited because Deloitte has been one of our biggest partners along the way, holding us accountable, being innovative with us, having some very hard conversations. And I'm curious for you, you interact with your clients around the world, and I'm sure they're asking you many of the same questions, right? What are the solutions? How do they think about the skills crisis in regards to their bottom line? Because now when we're thinking about education, it's not just the cute or humanitarian thing to do, it actually increases bottom lines for businesses when they're thinking about that correlation. And so I'm curious, what do you think are some of the positive skill opportunities for businesses, and what are the ways in which they should be engaging in this conversation in a more authentic way?
Yeah, and Jamira, it's a great question for a variety of reasons, because I do think that although the challenge is pretty daunting that we're trying to solve, it is a great opportunity for innovation, right? And in particular, if you think about the crisis that we're talking about, that is only exacerbated by the pandemic, as countries and cities become more competitive and technology permeates every aspect of our life and work, that skills gap is just going to continue to grow. So we fundamentally can't do things the same way that we have historically. And if you think about it, just in the US in and of itself, last month we reported, about 14 million individuals are underemployed. So clearly what we have operating with today is not going to be the solution that we need in place in the future. So that's why I love, for example, our participation in skills-friendly cities and the importance of the initiative overall, right? Just thinking about identifying ways to collaborate, share leading practice, share innovative approaches to addressing the challenge that we're talking about on a scale that we cannot achieve individually is really what's going to be key for driving change. The other thing is looking at organizations like we are also involved in, such as YARA, that are focused on job training for the most at-risk or troubling areas so that we can provide a pathway for people to continue to advance. And it's key for us to continue to diversify our workforce, which is not just a socially responsible thing to do. It is also an improvement to your bottom line, as numerous studies show.
Awesome. Well, I just want to say it so sucks that we can't continue this conversation longer because all of you are some of my favorite people, but I want to leave the audience with some positivity, right? Because a lot of times these issues can seem very daunting and insurmountable. But before we close out, I would be curious if each of you can tell me, what is one thing that makes you hopeful for the future, despite everything that is happening regarding providing education to those who are the most vulnerable, but also to young people around the world? And we'll start with Pia and then go to Kwasi and then to Jude and then we'll end with the youth voice.
The first thing that pops to mind, and Kwasi hit on it, is innovation, right? There's this other side of the coin that says, yeah, there's a crisis, but I am seeing so many young people come up with innovative ways to solve problems. And I'm hopeful in that sense.
Awesome.
So thank you.
I am hopeful with two items in particular, the sheer amount of activism and energy that is taking across youth who are faced with some of these challenges and wanting to change the world. And also just having forums like this where you have such prominent panelists and other participants throughout the course of the day who are trying to tackle this issue gives me hope for the future.
Awesome. Jude?
Yeah, I mean, I think that agreeing with everybody else, first of all, there's tremendous amount of youth activism and youth activism with a kind of complete understanding of systemic injustice. It's not just pockets of themes. I think people have a much better idea of systems and what needs to be done wholesale. And I think that, as you've just said, we're joining together globally, and we're looking at it, and we're determined. And also, the history of the human race. The human race wants injustice to be dealt with, and it's not linear, but there's plenty of examples of change happening, and we're all here to make that happen. That's my, you have a responsibility to be optimistic, because that's what gives you your stamina.
Agreed. Ousmane?
Well, I'm hopeful because firstly, I feel like young people embody the essential skills that Pia Wilson mentioned, which is communication, being resilient, and adapting. We have demonstrated that, especially in the course of in the wake of this pandemic, where at the front line we are taking on issues that matters not only to this generation, but that fall from the previous generation, as we're seeing with the Black Lives Movement on the street across the United States and of course across the world. But more importantly, what I'm also hopeful is that we are taking on our activism to very high side. We are not only descending on the street, but we are also participating in policy oriented structures, which is very, very important. The only thing I have to add is that in addition to that, we need help to make things happen. We need help to shake the system. And that's why I believe we need a woke leadership, one that will break through the political impasses we are seeing across the world, particularly the political gridlock we are experiencing in Washington. A leadership that subscribes to hope over fear, unity over division, the urgency of change over the status quo, and more importantly, a leadership that listens, because sometimes what we need is not that brilliant mind that speaks, but that kind heart that listens. So, yeah, I'm hopeful.
Okay, I didn't think you were going to take us to church, but I appreciate it. Can we also give our panelists a virtual hug and a round of applause? Thank you all so much for joining us for this conversation, but also thank everyone who's watching. This work can't be done with just a few small folks in a room. We all have to realize we have a role to play in ensuring that young people have access to quality education. Go grab your coffee, go grab your tea. We have more programs today. I hope everyone enjoy the rest of their day and think more innovatively of how we can get young people in school. So thanks to the panel. Enjoy the rest of your day and talk soon.
Thank you, Jamila. Have a wonderful day.
At Theirworld, we're committed to ending the global education crisis and unleashing the potential of the next generation. Our global youth ambassadors are the heart and core of what we do. We're proud of all they've achieved and the impact they've made across the world.
I have seen the power of youth advocacy. I know that politicians and decision makers are really moved when they hear the stories and the experiences and the views and the opinions of young people. And GYAs come from all over the world. Together you have thousands of stories.
One of my favorite memory of being a GYA is when I got asked to be part of the International Women's Day breakfast, and I was part of the panel discussion with two amazing fellow GYAs, and it was so rewarding. I was there talking in front of hundreds of people. I really loved that day, and it's still with me till now.
Some of the most inspirational moments I've had being a part of the Theirworld family has been my interactions with and in collaboration with other GYAs who are just phenomenal. They are change makers in their communities, in their countries, and so you are joining a coalition of folks who really believe in being an active participant in creating the world we all deserve.
I believe I've been a global youth ambassador for almost 5 years now, when I started off in 2015, and it's been a beautiful experience where I've met so many people and experienced so many beautiful initiatives together And I believe that you will have the same opportunity, the same beautiful experience yourself.
We already have nearly 1,000 GYAs on the programme, but we're not stopping there. If you're aged between 18 and 30 and you want to make a difference to the world, then we want to hear from you.
You have the power to bring about unprecedented change in the lives of millions of individuals all around the world. Your voice is your power. Use it.